Funny thing about sight. Everyone has eyes, but very few actually see. People walk through life blind, not because they can't, but because they don't want to. They see what's convenient, what fits their little version of reality, and they call that truth. They look straight at pain, betrayal, hypocrisy, and pretend it's invisible. They filter the world through comfort, through denial, through whatever lie helps them sleep at night. But the truth, it's always there, waiting to be seen. You ever notice how people love to brag about how aware they are? How they say things like, "I see through everything," as if their eyes could cut through lies like glass. But if you really look, you'll see they're just as blind as the ones they mock. Because seeing isn't about the eyes. It's about what the soul can handle. And most souls can't handle much. They see what keeps them comfortable, not what's real. They stare right at the truth and still call it a lie because the truth demands change, and change terrifies them. They'd rather keep their eyes closed and pretend the world is fine than face the chaos that's hiding behind their comfort. People don't want sight. They want stories. Pretty ones, ones that make them feel safe. They want to believe the people they love are genuine. The dreams they chase are pure. The systems they live under are fair. It's easier that way. The illusion is soft. It hugs you. It tells you that you're doing fine, that the pain you feel is temporary, that everything's going to make sense someday. But if you actually open your eyes, really open them, that illusion shatters. You start seeing the cracks in everything. You see the smiles that don't reach the eyes, the words that mean nothing, the promises built on convenience. You see the manipulation in kindness, the hunger behind love, the greed hiding in virtue. And once you see it, you can't go back. The funny thing about blindness is that it's peaceful. There's a kind of calm in not knowing. You walk through life thinking everyone means well, thinking life is supposed to be fair, thinking you're in control. But the second your eyes open, that peace dies. You realize the world isn't built on fairness. It's built on power. You realize love isn't always pure. Sometimes it's control in disguise. You realize success doesn't always come from hard work. Sometimes it's built on lies, manipulation, or luck. And when that realization hits, you start to feel a deep ache inside. Not because you're broken, but because you're finally awake. Most people can't handle that awakening. They fight it. They close their eyes again and pretend they never saw. They drown themselves in distractions, noise, entertainment, validation, anything to keep from thinking too deeply. They say they want truth, but what they really want is comfort dressed as truth. They'll scroll through fake lives on screens and call it inspiration. They'll worship false idols and call it purpose. They'll chase what everyone else chases, because seeing differently means being alone. And no one wants that. Seeing clearly is lonely. When you truly see, you realize how few people actually live. The rest are just repeating patterns, following scripts, recycling emotions that don't even belong to them. But there's a strange kind of beauty in seeing. Once your vision clears, you start noticing things that blind people never will. The way people reveal themselves in small gestures, the quiet honesty in pain, the subtle energy that tells you when something's off. You stop being fooled by appearances. You stop needing validation because you can see through it. You stop chasing what's shiny because you know what's hollow. You start craving truth more than comfort, even when it hurts, because pain becomes proof that you're alive. And when you live like that, the world changes shape. You start to see meaning in the chaos. The ones who see, really see. They're not smarter or special. They're just brave enough to keep their eyes open when everyone else looks away. They face the ugliness, the hypocrisy, the corruption, not because they enjoy it, but because they refuse to live blind. They'd rather face an uncomfortable truth than live a beautiful lie. And that kind of clarity, it costs everything. You lose people. You lose illusions. You lose the safety that comes from pretending. But in return, you gain sight. You start to see how things connect, how pain shapes strength, how endings hide beginnings, how every betrayal teaches discernment. You start to understand that seeing isn't about judging. It's about understanding. But don't get it twisted. Seeing doesn't make life easier. It makes it heavier, because once you see through the mask, you feel everything deeper. The world's cruelty cuts sharper, the lies feel louder, but so does the beauty. You start appreciating the rare moments of honesty, the rare souls who show up real, the rare acts of kindness that aren't performance. You start cherishing the small truths, a genuine smile, a moment of silence, the feeling of peace when no one's watching. Because once you've seen the world's darkness, those small sparks of light mean everything. And maybe that's the paradox of it all. Sight is both a blessing and a curse. To see clearly is to suffer, but it's also to understand. You stop living in illusion, and you start living in awareness. You stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start seeing, what is this trying to show me? You start realizing that blindness wasn't ignorance. It was protection. Life blinds you until you're ready to see. And when the moment comes, when those drops finally hit your eyes, it stings. It burns. But after the burn, the blur fades. And what's left is truth. Raw, unfiltered, unkind, but real. And once you see reality like that, you stop being afraid of it. Because even though the world is darker than you thought, it's also more real than you ever imagined. Funny thing about vision, people think seeing means understanding. They think that just because their eyes are open, they know what's happening around them. But there's a difference between seeing and perceiving. The eyes collect images, but the mind decides what to believe, and that's where it all gets twisted. Because the truth is, most people don't want to see reality. They want to see reassurance. They filter everything through what makes them feel safe, even if it means blinding themselves to what's actually there. They tell themselves they're realists, but they're living inside carefully built illusions. Illusions made of comfort, routine, and fear of disruption. They say they want clarity, but clarity demands pain. Clarity means letting go of what you thought was true. It means realizing the people you trusted might not care. The dreams you chased might not matter. And the rules you followed might have been written by someone who never had your best interest at heart. That's the real sting of sight. When you begin to see the world not as it's presented, but as it really is, you start noticing the cracks in people's words, in their smiles, in their motives. You start to feel that quiet hum of dishonesty that sits under most conversations. And once you notice it, you can't unnotice it. You start seeing it everywhere, in friendships built on convenience, in kindness traded for validation, in promises that were never meant to be kept. Most people can't handle that kind of awareness. It eats at them. Because when you see too clearly, you stop fitting in. You stop laughing at fake jokes. You stop clapping for hollow success. You stop pretending you don't see the manipulation in the system. And the moment you stop pretending, you become a threat. Society doesn't like people who see too much. It teaches you to stay quiet, to follow, to obey, to look, but not really see, to hear, but not really listen, to speak, but never truthfully. It rewards blindness and punishes awareness because blind people are easier to control. They consume what they're told, believe what they're fed, and never ask why things feel wrong. But the moment your vision clears, everything starts to change. You start seeing how people operate, the games they play, the masks they wear. You see the hunger in their eyes when they smile, the calculation in their kindness, the fear behind their pride. You start realizing that the world isn't built on truth. It's built on perception. People don't care about what's real. They care about what looks real. They'll sell their souls for appearances, sacrifice peace for validation, and call it success. They'll preach virtue to gain power, and the crowd will clap, never realizing they're worshiping a performance. And the ones who see through it all, they carry a strange burden. Because when your eyes are open, it's not just the ugliness you notice. It's the emptiness, the hollow spaces where authenticity should be. You start to feel a kind of quiet ache when you realize how few people are truly alive. Most are just existing, repeating thoughts that aren't theirs, chasing goals that were never theirs, loving people they don't even understand. And when you see that clearly, it's both tragic and liberating. Because you finally understand why the world feels so disconnected. Everyone's looking through a fog, and very few are trying to clear it. Seeing clearly changes how you move. You stop rushing. You stop reacting. You start observing. You start noticing patterns. How pain always follows lies. How emptiness follows greed. How chaos follows ego. You start seeing that most of the destruction in the world isn't caused by evil. It's caused by blindness. People hurting others because they can't see past their own wounds. People destroying what's beautiful because they don't recognize its worth. People chasing things that don't matter because they can't see what actually does. It's blindness wearing a mask of progress. And when you reach that point, when you truly start to see, you realize something else. Your vision isolates you. You stop belonging to the crowd because you no longer speak its language. You can't unsee the truth, and they can't understand it. You try to explain, but they call you cynical. You try to warn, but they laugh. You try to show them, but they look away. Because people don't like mirrors. Not the kind that show what's underneath. They'd rather keep their reflections blurred, because clarity exposes too much. Yet, despite the isolation, there's a strange power in vision. You start seeing opportunities where others see endings. You start recognizing patterns in chaos. You stop fearing loss because you understand that not everything that leaves is meant to stay. You start realizing that pain isn't punishment. It's illumination. Every heartbreak, every betrayal, every disappointment becomes a drop that clears your sight a little more. It strips away illusions, one by one, until only truth remains. And that truth, no matter how brutal, is freedom. But freedom isn't peace. Freedom is clarity. It's knowing exactly what's happening, even when it hurts. It's watching people play their games and choosing not to join. It's understanding that most of what the world worships is hollow and choosing to walk your own path anyway. It's seeing darkness and still refusing to let it blind you. Because in a world where everyone keeps their eyes shut tight, the one who dares to see, truly see, is the one who finally begins to live. You ever notice how people beg for signs, but when they finally get one, they act like they didn't see it? They say they want direction, guidance, clarity, but the moment something shakes their comfort, they call it coincidence. Funny, isn't it? They'll pray for change, but reject the very thing that was sent to change them. They'll cry out for answers, but when the truth shows up, they look away. Because the truth doesn't come wrapped in softness. It comes dressed in discomfort. It comes in betrayal, in loss, in the quiet collapse of everything they thought was secure. That's how the message arrives. Never as you expected, but always exactly as you needed. People think when something falls apart, it means failure. But sometimes, that destruction is divine. Sometimes, life has to tear down your illusions so it can build something real. You keep wondering why things didn't work out, why people left, why doors closed. Maybe because you were too attached to what was never meant to last. Maybe you were too busy holding on to what you thought was saving you, when in reality, it was the very thing keeping you blind. The universe doesn't whisper for long, it shakes. And when it does, it's not punishment, it's awakening. The problem is, everyone wants growth without chaos. They want transformation without turbulence. But tell me, how does light enter a room with no cracks? How does strength form without breaking? Pain is the scalpel that cuts away what's false. But no one wants to bleed for the truth. They want the glory without the grind, the wisdom without the wounds. They want to skip the suffering, but still claim to understand life. That's why so many live half awake, because they stopped listening when the message came wrapped in struggle. You see, when everything starts going wrong all at once, that's not bad luck. That's redirection. When people you thought would never leave suddenly vanish, that's alignment. When you feel like the ground beneath you is crumbling, that's preparation. The storm isn't here to destroy you. It's here to expose what was weak. The noise you hear when your life falls apart isn't chaos. It's truth breaking through. But most can't hear it. They're too busy trying to rebuild their old world instead of listening to what the new one is trying to say. And oh, how fragile people become when control slips from their hands. They panic, they blame, they spiral, because they never learned how to surrender. They were taught to fight everything, resist everything, fix everything. But what if the point isn't to fix it? What if the point is to finally see it? To stop forcing and start trusting? To stop grasping and start hearing? There's a moment when the noise stops, when everything you thought you wanted doesn't matter anymore. And in that silence, you finally hear the message that was always meant for you. But to reach that silence, you must first endure the breaking. Life isn't cruel. It's precise. Every delay, every rejection, every disappointment is timed perfectly. You just can't see the pattern while you're standing inside it. You think you're losing everything, but you're only losing the parts that don't belong. You think you're being punished, but you're being prepared. You think it's over, but it's only beginning. You're not being abandoned. You're being redirected. Every ending is an answer, even if it arrives in disguise. But only the ones who stay still long enough to feel it understand that. People drown not because they can't swim, but because they fight the current. They keep struggling to get back to the shore that's already gone. They can't accept that maybe the tide is taking them somewhere better. So they exhaust themselves clinging to what's already dead, then curse the waves for being merciless. But the waves aren't merciless. They're honest. They take everything fake away until only truth remains. And truth has no interest in your comfort. It's only interested in your awakening. And isn't that the cruel beauty of it all? That the same hands that break you are the ones that shape you. That the same nights that make you cry are the ones that birth your strength. That the same silence you fear is the space where your answers are waiting. It's almost poetic, the way life dismantles your illusions, piece by piece, until there's nothing left to protect but the real you. But you'll never see it while you're busy running from it. You have to sit in the ruins. You have to feel the loss. You have to stop pretending everything's fine and admit that you're being rebuilt. That's the moment you start to see it. The message hidden inside the madness. The lesson hiding behind the loss. You start to realize that maybe the pain wasn't punishment. It was permission. Permission to evolve, to detach, to become something truer. To stop being what the world told you to be and start becoming what you were actually meant to be. But that realization doesn't come easy. It comes after nights of questioning everything. It comes after your pride has been shattered and your ego's been exposed. It comes after the moment you stop saying, "Why me?" and start whispering, "Thank you." Because you finally understand that the chaos wasn't random. It was deliberate. Every fracture had a purpose. Every silence was a signal. Every loss was a lesson dressed as pain. That's when the message becomes clear. Not in words, but in understanding. It's not something you read, it's something you feel. It's not delivered by a voice, but by experience. It says, stop chasing what's leaving. Stop fearing what's unfolding. Stop doubting what's meant for you. Everything that fell apart was a translation of truth. Everything that hurt was pointing you back to yourself. The message isn't coming tomorrow. It's already here, buried inside the very pain you keep running from. People build their lives on illusions. They don't call them that. Of course, they call them dreams, plans, stability. But look close enough, and you'll see it's all smoke and mirrors. The job that drains them, they call it purpose. The relationships built on fear of loneliness, they call it love. The approval they chase, they call it success. Everyone's just acting in their own little movie, hoping the audience claps before the curtain falls. The illusion keeps them warm, keeps them sane. But deep down, they know it's fragile. One wrong move, one moment of truth, and it all shatters. People cling to illusions because they make life bearable. No one wants to stare too long at the emptiness beneath everything they built. It's terrifying to admit that the things you've spent years worshiping might be hollow. That the goals you sacrificed your peace for might not mean anything. That the people you trusted might not love you. They just needed you, so they convinced themselves. They repeat lies until they sound like lullabies. They drown in distractions, drown in noise, drown in pretending, because silence would expose too much. But the truth has a way of creeping in, slowly, quietly, like a crack spreading across glass. You start noticing things you used to ignore. The laughter feels forced. The success feels empty. The faces around you start looking unfamiliar. You realize you've been living in a play, reading from a script written by fear, obligation, society. Take your pick. You thought you were chasing happiness, but really, you were running from truth. And when that realization hits, it doesn't feel like enlightenment. It feels like death. The death of who you thought you were. The world doesn't want you to wake up. Wake up and you become unpredictable. Wake up and you stop buying their illusions. You stop needing validation. Stop chasing attention. Stop believing the stories they feed you. And that terrifies people. Because someone who sees clearly can't be controlled. They can't be manipulated by fake smiles, by titles, by money, by fear. And in a world built on control, that kind of clarity is dangerous. So what do? They call it cynicism. They say you're cold, bitter, negative. Because they can't understand how someone could see through the lie and still keep walking. But it's not bitterness, it's awareness. When you strip away the illusions, you're not left with darkness. You're left with something raw, something real. It's not that you stop believing in good. It's that you finally understand where it hides. Not in words, not in promises, but in actions, in silence, in truth. The thing about illusions is they don't just protect you from pain. They protect you from growth. They keep you trapped in comfort, in routine, in mediocrity. You stay in that job you hate because it's secure. You stay in that relationship because it's familiar. You tell yourself this is what life is supposed to be: safe, stable, predictable. But safety is just another cage. And the longer you stay inside it, the more your soul forgets how to fly. That's why everything starts feeling dull. That's why you feel alive only when things fall apart. Because for a brief moment, the illusion breaks and you see reality naked. And when that happens, it's terrifying. Because now you know. You can't unsee it. You can't go back to pretending that surface-level happiness is enough. You start craving meaning, depth, truth. Things that don't come easy, things that require you to burn your old self to ash. You start losing people who can't handle your honesty. You start walking away from places that no longer feed you. You stop explaining yourself because no explanation can make blindness see. It's a lonely path, but it's real. Every illusion you break costs you something: a friendship, a comfort, a version of yourself. But what you gain is everything they never told you existed: freedom, peace, vision. The kind that doesn't depend on circumstance. The kind that doesn't break when things go wrong. Because when you finally see clearly, you stop expecting the world to make sense. You stop waiting for fairness, justice, validation. You stop searching for meaning outside of yourself. You realize that life doesn't owe you understanding. It offers you awareness, and awareness is everything. It's funny. People call it losing faith when you stop believing their lies. But maybe it's the first time you've ever had real faith. Faith in what's unseen but true. Faith in what hurts but heals. Faith in your own eyes, now clear of illusion. Because when the world's false light fades, and all that's left is the raw glow of truth, you don't need to pretend anymore. You finally see it, the beauty hiding inside the chaos, the honesty in pain, the simplicity of just being real. The illusions fall, one by one, and what remains is something the world can't imitate. It's clarity, and it's freedom, and it's terrifyingly pure. Once your eyes open, innocence doesn't just fade, it dies. And it doesn't die quietly. It screams on its way out, clawing at your mind, begging to stay, because innocence is comfort. It's that soft illusion that the world is fair, that people are kind, that love always wins. But once you start seeing clearly, you realize those were bedtime stories, told to keep you calm in a world built on chaos. You stop believing in the idea that good things happen to good people, that truth always triumphs, that everyone has the same heart as you. You start seeing people for who they really are, not who they pretend to be. And that realization, it changes something inside you forever. You remember the first time someone lied to you and you believed them. The first time you trusted someone completely and they turned your honesty into ammunition. The first time you poured love into someone who only saw you as an option. Back then, it confused you. It broke you. But now you understand. It was never about them. It was about waking you up, about forcing you to see that purity, when left unguarded, becomes a target. The world doesn't respect innocence. It exploits it. And you, with your heart wide open, became the perfect victim. But not anymore, because once you've seen how easily people trade truth for convenience, you can't walk through life blindfolded again. They'll tell you that losing your innocence makes you bitter, that seeing reality makes you dark, cynical, hard. But that's not true, is it? You didn't become cold. You became aware. You stopped expecting loyalty from the disloyal. You stopped seeking honesty from liars. You stopped offering depth to the shallow. It's not bitterness. It's boundaries. You didn't stop caring. You just stopped